for the YouTube live streaming, so just so you're aware of that.
Yeah, just gave her host so she can go ahead and start the stream.
Awesome.
Danielle, should we go?
Yes, right at 2 p.m. I'll count down from 5 and then we can get started. So
Okay.
Santiago, when you're ready to start it, when I count down.
Hey guys, just let me know when you're ready and go ahead and start the webinar at 2 p.m.
All right. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go live.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Anthony Pereira. I'm the director of the Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center. And we're here today to understand the latest updates on Haiti's provisional government. The situation in Haiti remains quite critical. According to reliable reports, at least 1,379 people were reported killed or injured in Haiti from April through June of this year, another 428 kidnapped, and there are at least 700,000 displaced Haitians, of which more than half are children, as gangs continue to control large parts of the territory of Haiti. Just a couple of days ago, the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, met with Mr. Leslie Voltaire, who's a member of the Transitional Presidential Council of Haiti, and they discussed the need to accelerate progress on both the security and political tracks and to ensure an elected government is in place by February 2026, as agreed by Haitian stakeholders. They also talked about encouraging greater international support for addressing gang violence and the humanitarian situation in Haiti. That's according to a UN press release. We have a very well-qualified panel today to join us to give initial remarks, and then we can open it up to questions from those of you on the line. And our first speaker, I'll introduce them each in turn. Our first speaker is Franley Julien. Franley is as a graduate of Florida International University. He's one of our own. He has a degree in English literature from the Honors College. Franley worked as a prosecutor in Miami-Dade County before opening his own practice. He is a native speaker of both Creole and French. He's appeared on Haitian radio and television and writes for various publications. And I can't do justice to the qualifications of all of our panelists, so that's just an abbreviated bio of Franley. But Franley, if you can start off with 5 minutes or so of your analysis of where we are with the security and political situation in Haiti, and where do you think the situation is moving? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel. What I want to do during my 5 minutes is to give a brief overview of the situation in Port-au-Prince, then Cap Haitian, where I am from, and then I will proffer my theory of what I think the international community is trying to do when it comes to security in Haiti. The situation in Port-au-Prince, we just heard from Dr. Pereira. There has not been a lot of improvements, although I think we've seen a decrease of kidnapping cases. The Kenya mission has been on the ground for a little bit over 2 months now, but they only have 400 police officers. They've been complaining of a lack of equipment. When the Kenyan mission was deployed, people in Haiti were hoping that the deployment would coincide with at least a symbolic happening. This symbolic happening could be, for example, the dismantlement of one major gang, the killing or capture of one major gang leader, or that the government could regain control of one of the major roadways currently under gang control, but none of these three things has happened, and the Kenyan mission is losing credibility as we go because people's expectations are disappointed. There have been a few important operations in Haiti. For example, part of Grecier is a city close to Port-au-Prince. Part of Grecier that was under gang control has been regained by the national police, and this operation was conducted by it was a joint operation by the SWAT team and the UTAG. UTAG is the anti-gang tactical unit. The 400 Mawozo, which is a very powerful gang, was trying to build a wall in Gantier, and this wall was dismantled by a joint operation of SWAT and UTAG as well. However, we've seen also gang retaliation. For example, yesterday, gang members aboard a bus shot at a group of police officers. One of the officers was killed. Another one is currently in the hospital. Now, in Cap Haitian, for someone who does not know Haiti to understand the situation in Cap Haitian, it bears, I need to make some, put it into perspective. Cap Haitian in 1950, where this is when we had the first census in Haiti. In 1950, Cap Haitian had 25,000 people living there. In 1970, it went to 50,000. Today, I spoke with the mayor of Cap Haitian this morning. The city has about 1 million people, and until recently, we had 500 police officers, but with the Biden humanitarian program, about 100 have left. So you have about 400 police officers for about 1 million people. But it is also important to understand that with Port-au-Prince being so insecure, Cap Haitian is now taking care of five departments: the northern department where Cap Haitian is located, the northeast, the northwest, the Artibonite, and the center. So people from all of those departments, when they need to get a passport, travel to the United States, they go to Cap Haitian. So you can understand the pressure that Cap Haitian is under right now. And we have seen proliferation of gangs, not only in Cap Haitian, the metropolitan area of Cap Haitian, but also in smaller cities around Cap Haitian. So the average from my conversation with police officers and the mayor of Cap Haitian, in every single small city around Cap Haitian, you have on average 2-3 gangs operating right now. And the problem is, when those gangs do anything, let's say someone gets killed, it is not reported as gang activities, whereas it actually is. For example, last weekend, the local rep of the International Organization for Migration was killed at 1 a.m. by a gang in Cap Haitian. He was killed right in front of his residence. Now, there have been issues as well in terms of governance. We've seen a lot of conflicts between the prime minister and the security presidential council. A lot of conflict locally and on the international scene. We don't think they are getting along. It seems to me that the international community is taking sides as well. I wouldn't be shocked to see the prime minister being more and more recognized as the personal interlocutor to the international community. Lastly, my theory on where the international community wants to go security-wise with Haiti, I think the Kenyan deployment was the application of the foot in the door theory practice. I think the international community always wanted a UN mission and multinational security support mission from the UN, but given the UN bad press in Haiti, I think they hesitated. They started with the Kenyan mission, and now they want to switch to what, in my opinion, has always been their plan, is to have another UN mission in Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you, Franley, both for that prediction and this description of the situation in Cap Haitien, which sounds very like a huge change, big trauma. I forgot to mention that I wanted to thank the Jack Gordon Institute and also Pay Cargo for this event. Their support is very important, as well as LAC, of course, Latin American Caribbean Center. We'll be able to come back to you, Franley, in the question and answer period, so to tease out the implications of some of what you've just said. But we now like to turn to Michelle Austin-Pamies. Michelle was born in Port-au-Prince. She is a graduate of the University of Miami School of Law. She is a founding partner of Austin-Pamies Norris Weeks Powell, LLC, and her practice involves representing municipalities and businesses and handling their transactional and litigation needs. And like Franley, Michelle has participated in other webinars for us, and I very much welcome her back and appreciate her views. And Michelle, it's the mic. I'll turn the mic over to you for your analysis of this present conjuncture in the situation in Haiti. Thank you. Michelle, you're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
And I was on a roll. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm here representing the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy, whose mission is to engage the Haitian diaspora in promoting policies that enhance democracy, economic development, and inclusion. My executive director, the executive director of our organization, Ariel, Dominique, was to have been here today, but she was not available, and I'm here as a board member representing HAVD. I thank Friendly for what is really a journalist eye view of what's going on in Haiti, and it was very thorough in terms of Port-au-Prince and Cape Haitian. I will not repeat what Stanley has said, but I will focus a bit on governance, even though he's touched on it, because that's really the crux of the analysis for me. For HAVD, there has been a lot of talk recently about the first 100 days of Gagi Koni's government, and it's seen differently by different parties. On the one hand, the Prime Minister talks about having secured $2 billion in financing from international financial organizations that would be spent over the next 2 years, and having formed a government in record time. On the other, William O'Neill, UN independent expert on human rights in Haiti, has reported that gang control has increased by 5%, and that the population continues to suffer from human rights violations, sexual violence is used as a weapon by gangs to control the population, and that has drastically increased in recent months, that gangs have increasingly trafficked children, forcibly recruited them into gangs, and often used them to carry out attacks against public institutions and police operations. From William O'Neill's perspective, the youth in Haiti are losing hope of a better future. Now, when we talk about the conflicts occurring between the Presidential Council members and the Prime Minister, there are numerous types of conflicts taking place. Now, these conflicts have been put on public display this week at the UN General Assembly, as certain council members have openly blamed the Prime Minister for the delay in the Secret Service providing protection for the President of the Council, among other things. 3 members of the council are accused of having asked the president of the National Bank of Credit $800,000 to keep his job. CARICOM leaders have suggested that those 3 members should resign. Some of the sectors representing the 3 members have sent proposed replacement names to CARICOM. Others in the international community outside of CARICOM believe that while an investigation is taking place, these 3 members should at least not be permitted to vote. None of the 3 members are currently willing to budge. This has made it rather difficult for the council to work, but nonetheless, a provisional electoral council has been formed. There has been some criticism that 3 of the sectors designating a representative to the Presidential Council are from church groups, which seems like a rather large percentage of the total to some. The MSS has not provided the expected support due to lack of funds and equipment. As Friendly indicated, there are only 400 officers from Kenya, police officers from Kenya, and 20 from the Caribbean so far. President Ruto of Kenya has indicated that he will be sending 600 more troops by November. Although the international community is really, I would say the US is really working on having the UN come back and accept this to be a UN peacekeeping mission. The argument is that that would ensure funding, because funding for the MSS is largely voluntary, and the countries that were supposed to support have not really responded. There's great concern today about President Ruto speaking to the Dominican Republic about contributing troops to the MSS. In Haiti, something like that would be just totally unacceptable. Security, although there's been an electoral council formed, security has always been a stated problem to hold elections. Since there is no improvement in the security, that will continue to be a problem for the 2025 supposed elections, unless something significant happens in the next few months. That's all I'm saying for now, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Michelle. We will be able to come back to you. And thanks also for reminding me that another important partner of ours, in addition to the Jack Gordon Institute and Pay Cargo, is the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy. We're very glad to partner with you. So our third analyst is Jeffsky Poincy. He is a policy specialist with a degree in public policy and international development, with a focus on governance from Duke's Sanford School of Public Policy. He serves as a program manager at Partners Global, an international NGO based in Washington, D.C. He has experience in economic development, strategic planning, program management, policy development in Haiti, and he's also part of a Haitian anti-corruption organization, NUPAP Domi. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, Jeffsky. But it's thanks for being with us, and it's over to you for your analysis of the conjuncture right now, the political and security conjuncture in Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira, and hi everyone. Thanks again for having me on this panel to share my analysis on the political transition in Haiti. I also want to, thank FIU for always creating those spaces to discuss Haiti. And I think this is my fourth event with you guys focused on Haiti this year alone. And I really appreciate that, there's always this commitment to feature Haitian expert to include Haitian voices in this conversation. I think this is, much appreciated. My fellow panelists did a comprehensive briefing and comprehensive overview of the situation. So what I think I will do is that I will, build upon those different points that they mentioned to emphasize on some, and to also, give my analysis on the political transition, especially the transition government structure, as some people might not be familiar with this specific model, and also give my, analysis on the agenda of the transitional government. And as Michelle mentioned, it has been, over 100 days that the transitional government took power in Haiti. It's a, transition government with two bodies, a presidential council with 9 members, including 7 voting members and 2 non-voting members, and also a government that is comprised of a prime minister and the different ministers. So this transition government was mainly created with the mandate to, 1, restore security, prepare the elections, facilitate a national dialogue, and also implement some constitutional reform. So those are like the 4 major components of the mandate of the transition government. What is interesting to mention is that we haven't experienced this model before in Haiti. It's pretty new to us, and that's why I think it's very important to think about the benefits of this specific model, the shortcomings, and those different challenges that it has in implementing those different reforms. So one of the benefits that we've seen, as for the presidential council, is the fact that it really, helps streamline the negotiation and facilitate the decision-making process. And as we've seen during the Orienary government, there was a lot of gridlock when it comes to reaching consensus among the political actors, which is different in this case because the major political actors, they are within this specific council. So and they are the one who actually has the capacity to disrupt the political process or to oppose the decisions. Now that they are within the council, it helps streamline the process, and it actually goes a little bit faster. And case in point, as Michelle mentioned, it was they were able to form a government within, I would say, less than 30 days, which is a record for Haiti, especially in the context of transition. So that's one of the benefit, coming from this, specific model. And the other aspect is that, they were able to provide some kind of stability when it comes to governance, because, during these times of instability, there was a need for just enough governance, especially for the donors community, for the international community, who wanted to have more like a reliable counterpart to deal with on those different issues, humanitarian issues, and so on. And I think those are like the 2 main benefits that came out of the transition government, even though we haven't seen any structural changes when it comes to security, when it comes to the humanitarian situation, the economic situation, and so on. But we should also, talk about the shortcoming of the transition government. And one of the major issue of this government is the fact that a lot of provision from the from the agreement that led to the creation of this transition haven't been established. And sadly, most of those mechanisms that haven't been established, including an oversight body, which would have the role to oversee the entire government, hasn't been established and involve the participation of the civil society. So, which I think is a missed, opportunity, because the government really had, like a huge opportunity to engage the civil society more in a way that could lend more legitimacy to the transition. And this is in contrast, also represent a major threat for the transitional government, the fact that the civil society hasn't been that much involved in the process. And in terms of challenges, the biggest challenge is, as any political consensus that involve different parties with different opinion and different perspective, it's very vulnerable, it's very volatile, and the slightest disagreement among them can derail the entire process. And Michelle and just mentioned the conflict that, the signs of conflict that we've seen between the presidential council and the government. So I think this constitutes one of the biggest threats for this entire process. And the real question here is whether, the actors can, maintain a level of calm and cooperation to make sure that, the process continue. That's a very important aspect. And Frande also mentioned the fact that we can see through, this entire process that the international community is, taking side. I think this is very important for the international community to understand that this process is very fragile, is very volatile, and there is a need for them to make sure that they don't take side and they encourage the parties to become, to remain unified, as it's one of the main factor of success for this transition. So now, just to briefly talk about the electoral process. So there hasn't been a lot of effort in putting in place the electoral process, except that the electoral council has been formed, even though there are still 2 members that have yet to be appointed. But I think it's very hard to talk about the elections right now, and the transition has 15 months to organize the elections, and there's a lot of preconditions that need to be met, in order to get to a point where we can have election. And the first one, as Michelle mentioned, is the security. Right now, 80%, roughly 80% of the metropolitan area are still controlled by gangs, and that create a lot of issues because 50% of the Haitian population actually live within in the West Department, within this metropolitan area. So if they remain under the control of the gangs, it's safe to assume that the gangs would have control over the elections. And just to illustrate that a little bit better, the West Department and the Department of Artibonite account for 70% of the electorate of Haiti, according to the last elections. And those 2 departments are the 2 departments that are the most affected by gang violence. So if these regions are not secure, if there's not some kind of free movement between those departments and so on, if the gang violence is not under control, then it will be very hard to kind of put in place the logistics for the elections, and also to allow people to go and vote and go campaigning as well. And the other important aspect of the election is this trust, right? So trust is a precondition for any type of election, especially in this transitional context. So many political actors have been very skeptical about the voter ID system, which has been a contentious issue since Jovenel Moïse. There was a lot of corruption involved in all that. And, there's a lot of actors have been calling for having an independent audit of this voter ID system, which I don't quite see is a priority for the current government. So trust is important, and that should start with this voter ID system. If there's not an audit to actually, show that there's the process is fair and the government has the capacity to organize elections, then I think the process would be, again, be very challenging and complicated. And the other aspect is the constitutional reform. It seems that the government make the constitutional reform like a condition for the elections, and that's gonna affect, and that's gonna delay for the preparation for the elections, because the electoral decree, the mechanism for funding the political parties and so on will be contingent, to the constitutional reform. And I really don't see how the government could implement a constitutional reform now, especially if that would involve referendum, and so on. Those are like critical factors that I think should be, taken into account. It's a very tight deadline, 15 months to have the election. It's, for me, it's in my opinion, it seems to be quite challenging, not to say impossible. So now you may wonder what could happen if we don't get to elections within 15 months. So that's a great question, and I think we can talk about that later. But my assumption is the best case scenario, there would be a reshuffling of the transitional government, perhaps the presidential council, and worst case scenario, there would be an entire collapse of the transitional government in itself, and that would unfortunately take us back to the beginning and to the drawing board. So that's my analysis. In regards to the security issue, Friendly, touch on a little bit about the MSS, and I think it's been I would say a few weeks that the MSS has been on the ground. There hasn't been any notable changes on when it comes to security. The international community is trying to turn the mission into a UN peacekeeping mission to address some of the shortcomings of the mission. But I think that is going to be a very challenging process as well, right? So for between securing a deal within the UN Security Council to deploying the equipment and the troops to Haiti, that would take us probably 15 months, if not more, which I think is pretty challenging. There's a lot to say about the MSS, about its shortcomings, about the fact that it will not really help addressing the security issue on Haiti, but I will stay here and we can address the remaining during the question. And
Thank you, Jessica. That's very helpful. And I think what I'd like to do now is incorporate the questions that we've received through the chat, and we can do another round of comments in response to these. These are anonymous. I'd like to add a few of my own, just because you've piqued my interest in some of the things you said. But let me give you the four questions that we've received, and you can be selective in dealing with these. It's up to you. But the first one, and you've all talked about the security situation to some extent, but the first question is asking you to say a bit more about it. It's what strategies are being implemented to combat the gang violence, and how effective have these been so far? I think you've all, as I said, you all touched on it, but if you could elaborate a bit. The second one is focused on youth, and it's asking, in what ways can the youth be empowered to take an active role in shaping their country's future? The third one, again, is something that you've all touched on, but it's asking you to maybe, say a bit more. How can international aid be structured to be more effective and sustainable in supporting Haiti's development? And of course, we all know about how much aid went in after the earthquake, and how much of it was badly used. And the fourth one is about, the fourth one asks, why are those being investigated for corruption dictating processes? Why can't these three men be placed on mandatory leave? Who is responsible for investigating them, and how's this process started, and how long will it take? So I don't know which you might know, but I don't know which three people that are being referred to here. But it's a corruption investigation. And then for Friendly, I just wanted to ask you, your prediction is that the Kenyan mission is a sort of placeholder for a multinational peacekeeping force managed by the UN. And it sounds to me, the way that you said that is not desirable, that the cost of that would be higher than the presumed benefits. And I just wondered if that is your conclusion, what alternative might there be, given that you said how limited the Kenyan mission is and how little credibility it seems to have. For Michelle, I wanted to ask you, I perfectly understand why President Ruto going to the Dominican Republic and asking them to send troops would send alarm signals in Haiti. But I just wondered what the background is to that, why he even did that, and what sort of advice was he getting for him to think that that was a great idea. And for Jeffsky, I think your point at the end that the constitutional reform preceding the election may be the wrong sequence. It may be better to have an election and then empower that government to do something about the Constitution. But I wanted to ask about something else, because after periods of violence, many countries have instituted a truth commission of some kind of investigative body. And I know there was one under President Aristide, but it wasn't very effective. But is that something that could be a mechanism to restore trust, which you mentioned as being very important? So I know I've thrown a lot at you. You can be selective in your comments, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to comment on those things, and they incorporate what our listeners, some of what our listeners are thinking. And start with you. We'll go in the same order. So, Friendly, if you could start us off, thank you.
That's a lot. Okay, let me try and allow some time for my fellow panelists to react to those points. The first thing I'd like to touch on is the corruption investigation involving 3 members of the Presidential Council. Michelle touched on this during her presentation. What happened is the president of the National Bank of Credit he sent a letter to the Prime Minister accusing 3 members of the National Bank of Credit of asking him for bribes to keep his position. I think it was $800,000. And I was taken aback by first of all, the fact that the letter went to the Prime Minister directly, but also by the Prime Minister's reaction. The Prime Minister came from the UN system. So I think his first reaction would be to protect the whistleblower, but that's not what he did. What he did was to promptly fire the whistleblower when there seems to be evidence of his allegations. So he fired the whistleblower who's currently in the United States, and I think this is clearly a total absence of commitment to fight corruption. I was taken aback by this. Now, what's happening with those people, those 3 members of the Presidential Council? I know, and I think Michelle mentioned it, that CARICOM is currently putting pressure on the Haitian government so that these 3 individuals may be replaced. But it's not obvious because I think they should have been replaced a long time ago. So we'll see what happens. Now, another question I'd like to touch upon is the youth empowerment question. We all know about the proverbial fight or flight reaction in the presence of danger. Unfortunately, as an immigration attorney, I can tell you that I think the Haiti's youth is in flight mode for several reasons. There has been a series of disappointments. Each time they support people in the electoral process, they have been disappointed, also the prospect of coming to the United States, which has been made so easy by the Biden administration, has kind of demobilized Haiti's youth. Most people right now are waiting for to be approved to come to the United States. And I don't think Haiti's youth is in a position today to fight for the future of the country. It bears mentioning that in today's Haiti, the only factor of social mobility and of maintenance of social status is politics. Even those who are in business, in the business sector, if they don't have the government as their main client, they're not gonna make money. Because of that, Haiti's youth is not really interested in going to school or starting businesses because they know that it's not leading anywhere. So I think it's gonna take some doing to motivate the youth, Haiti's youth. For that to happen, we're gonna have to have a government that inspires trust. And I don't think the current administration has inspired any trust to anybody in Haiti. We're hoping that they don't fail, but I've been, extremely skeptical lately, particularly in light of the way the Prime Minister reacted to the whistleblower in the corruption case involving the presidential council members. I'll let my other panelists, place their words, and I'll come back if necessary.
Thank you, Friendly. That's very judicious of you. You're leaving some things on the table there for your fellow panelists. So, Michelle, I know there's a lot that was thrown out there, but feel free to take up whichever issues you feel are most pressing.
Right. In terms of what I took note of among the questions, I still have to focus on what we started out with Friendly, which is what happens to the 3 presidential council members who have been accused of corruption and basically offering a bribe to the president of the Banque Nationale de Crédit in Haiti, or National Bank of Credit. So these 3 were accused, and Friendly said it directly. The whistleblower was not protected. In fact, you would say the whistleblower was retaliated against. But what's important is this. There is supposed to be an investigation taking place with respect to the 3 alleged corrupt presidential council members. Some say that during the investigation process, they should be on pause. They're being investigated, and during this investigation, they wouldn't participate in the voting. They would just kind of be out there waiting for the result. That's one approach. And the problematic part of that approach, though, is that they probably know that investigations in Haiti start today and never. There have been so many of them like that. So they have no assurances that it would take place within a reasonable time. And therefore, they may never participate again, even if they were found at some point to be not guilty with respect to the allegations. That's one. The other one is they actually do not want to make a move at all. They're not willing to be put aside. They're not willing to resign. They're not willing to let others be appointed in their stead. One thing to understand is that they are appointed by a sector. The 3 are at issue. One is appointed by what they call the 21st of December group, which a group of political parties that got together the 21st of December, and one is appointed by that group. That's Gérard Gilles. Another is appointed by Moïse Jean Charles' group, Petite Dessalines, and a third is appointed by a combination of other political parties, which include Aide Claude Joseph and really several of the former senators that have been accused of that have been sanctioned, actually. And the thing about that is, within those groups, the sectors who appointed them, the sectors don't want them anymore. Two of the sectors clearly said they want somebody else. And they sent to CARICOM other names. Now you're representing a sector, but the sector is already putting you aside. It's very problematic. Who are you representing now? The thing to remember, though, is that if the sectors are allowed to reappoint, then all the other members of the Presidential Council would also feel insecure because they represent sectors, and can sectors just come and change them willy-nilly? What Jeff C. said, which is really important, is that the accord that formed this Presidential Council and this transition government isn't being respected. There is no mechanism in place to say, what do we do with a Presidential Council member who's corrupt? Even if he's determined to be, there is nothing in writing anywhere that addresses that. So therefore, in the absence of some guiding principle, the three who've been accused of corruption say, you don't have any basis to do anything, I'm just staying. So for the time being, that's what's going on. The credibility of the Presidential Council, however, is suffering. And I think any disrespect that would be shown by the international community or the Prime Minister is easier to justify because of this weakness in the Presidential Council, and that three of its members have been credibly accused of corruption. I have a background. Eric, tu dois t'enlever, tout le monde te voit. Yes, so that to me is a key issue. There is no mechanism in place to say what to do with these three members. I think that's key. And what Jeffsky said, which was important as well, is that there was in the accord that formed this transition government a mechanism for oversight that by various sectors. That was important because one of the things we complained about the most with Oyelari was that there was no checks and balances. So even though now we have a Presidential Council and a Prime Minister, which provides some check and balance, what this body was supposed to represent that was described in the accord is something like a parliament. It's not elected, but it's a group that could oversee the actions of the executive, which is a fundamental part of government. And we need that, and we don't have that right now, and that's why it's a little bit of a mess. Now, with respect to the Dominican Republic and the troops, listen, I saw the declaration by President Ruto only today. The statement he made involved, they will be providing us with a variety of support, etc. And then the word troops was included. Now I have to tell you, if there was anything that could rally all Haitians together today, it would be the impression that the Dominicans are coming and trying to colonize them. Now, we may disagree on everything, but on that one point, we all agree. We're not having that, and somebody needs to be communicating it to the Kenyan president. We have, at HAVD, had the opportunity to speak to the Kenyans on several occasions. They seemed open and willing to listen to what's going on, what Haitians think about what they're doing. I think the time for them to regroup and consult is now, as it relates to any Dominican involvement.
Thank you, Michelle. Jeffsky, there's a lot there that we've brought up. Feel free to pick and choose and maybe compliment your fellow panelists in terms of what they've already talked about. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I think, on the corruption issue, related to the three members of the Presidential Council, I think this is a huge political dilemma, or from a political standpoint, it's a dilemma because, as I mentioned earlier, the Presidential Council is a very fragile, structure. So if the three members don't resign, then that will severely affect our credibility, the integrity of the structure. But at the same time, if they resign, as Michelle mentioned, that could destabilize the Presidential Council and lead to other changes. So it's a real dilemma, and I think, in my opinion, I think that this issue will be resolved politically, and but at the same time, I recognize the dilemma and the risk that are associated to it. I wanted to talk a little bit about two very important things that you mentioned, Pereira. First is the constitutional reform preceding the elections or not. I think that's a very important question, and we don't talk a lot about that because the entire conversation has been focused on the security issue. So a lot of actors really see this current situation as a window of opportunity, especially since there's no parliament. They see it as a window of opportunity to have a constitutional reform without having to go through the proper channel, which would be the reform to be passed in the parliament. So now we can debate about whether we need a new constitution. I know this constitution hasn't been implemented fully. I know there's a lot of impediment in this current constitution that makes it very, very, very hard for government to operate and so on. But this is beyond the point. The real question is, can we have a constitutional reform right now in this context? And if we can, how are we going to do it to make sure that this constitution has enough legitimacy to frame the governance or the future of the country for the next 30 years and plus? So that's a very delicate thing. That's a very delicate question that we should really, think about, because if we do it without, for example, involving the civil society actively, without involving the population, either through a referendum or any kind of, voting mechanism, it will be very complicated to have a legitimate constitution that people will abide by for the next 30 years. I think, having a bad constitution is one. Having a constitution that doesn't have the legitimacy is something else. So that's one point about the constitutional reform. The other point that I wanted to talk about also is the mechanism for trust, and truth commission. I think this is not only I think it's a must, given the context of Haiti. There have been a lot of massacre. There have been a lot of crimes committed by government officials, committed by, the gangs. So there has to be some kind of mechanism to not only shed light on those, different crimes, but also to set the stage for social dialogue in the country, to instill trust in government, and to make sure that, people, that the Haitian population can, stitch the social fabric. This is very important. And as you might be aware of, this government recently published a decree forming this truth commission. But surprisingly, most of the members of this commission are government officials that were passed, from the past administration and so on, which poses a clear, problem of conflict of interest, because some of the government have been involved in the crimes. So, but also there's this trust aspect. You cannot have a truth commission without trust. So in this commission, there should be people that can not only convene the Haitian population, wherever they are, from different regions, from different group, ethnicity, and so on, but also that could have the the capacity to, encourage trust, to instill trust in this process. So this is a very important thing to think about. And this is I wouldn't want that to be a missed opportunity as well, right? Because if we take this process lightly, then we're gonna just, that's gonna be a missed of opportunity. In regards to the security issue regarding the MSS, and I think we've seen a lot of weaknesses of the MSS, and as a lot of experts have been, explaining from the beginning, the MSS mission is not going to address the security issue in Haiti, right? And that for different reasons, from a policy perspective, but also from an operational perspective. But from a policy perspective, the MSS would only focus on tackling the gangs. And what we've seen in Haiti for the past, 30 years since we've been experiencing gang violence is that the gang itself is just a piece of the problem, right? And as an example, most of the gang members that we have today, they didn't exist 5 years ago. Before them, there were other gang members that got killed. Some of them got imprisoned. But the reality is, no matter what you do with the gangs, there is always a system that will always like an ecosystem that is willing to fuel the gangs again and again, to allow them to emerge in the same area where they're operating. I think there has to be a lot of focus on addressing this issue from the supply side, to think about, what is the supply chain? How could those gang members who never leave their community, never go to school, doesn't have any type of, linkage with the world? How could they have, so many weapons? How could they have, unlimited resources, ammunitions, and so on to outgun the police? I think there has to be a lot of focus on that, to make sure that we investigate people that are involved in the armed trafficking, to make sure that we cut the linkage between the gangs and the drug trafficking in the region, and also to cut this linkage between the gangs and the politicians and people from the business sectors that have been, acting as sponsors of this entire gang violence.
Thank you, Jeffsky. That's where Florida comes in, I think. That's part of the supply side problem.
Absolutely.
I wanted to thank all the members of the panel for being very concise. I know you're filtering a lot of experience and a lot of information and addressing these issues very concisely. And I'm now going to challenge you to be even more concise than you've been up to now. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I want to give you a chance to have some final thoughts, but I'm reducing you kind of to the length of a tweet, or a equivalent of a tweet, because we've got about 5 minutes left. So Julia, Friendly, sorry, I know that you were wanting to come in on something that Jeffsky said. So please come in.
Yes. So quickly, and I wanted to thank both Michelle and Jeffsky and FIU for putting this together, and Michelle and Jeffsky for really qualitative input. What I wanted to say has to do with the Constitution. This will be my closing remark. I think if there's one area where Haiti needs assistance from the international community, is in the area of constitutional reform. I have read everything produced in Haiti lately, and the state of constitutional scholarship is extremely poor. For example, in the area of decentralization, the concept of decentralization prevailing in Haiti today is to multiply the number of political functions, while the appropriation process remains centralized. This is the French model, and France has been struggling a lot with this. Also, this idea that those who are enacting the laws be above the law. This is a principle that has been rejected worldwide, but Haiti tends to stick to this. And Jeffsky, I appreciate the fact that you said that it's a good opportunity that we don't have parliament right now. But I think one of the things that remains constant is the fact that, in my opinion, Haiti will need some help putting together in the constitution because the state of constitutional scholarship is extremely poor today.
Thanks, Friendly. And that's a really important issue because you need upstream legitimacy. You need a process that's accepted as fair, and then you also need a document that's accepted as relevant and fair. So it's a sort of double challenge. But Michelle, let me draw on you and ask you to come in now for your parting thoughts on these really anything to do with the current provisional government.
Right. So as governance is to me the key issue before we get to any other step, one of the things I believe is that the presidential council, they need to start acting as a council and not as individuals. If you're a member of the council, but you're acting as an individual, you have no power. Your power comes from acting as a body and voting on issues. If they're having a conflict with the prime minister, their power would lie in their unity. And they haven't been able to do that. And this is something that to me is really important. They can't be individuals. With respect to the prime minister himself, he could be very powerful and very influential. But the thing is, at the end of the day, he was voted in by these 7 individuals. And they did it unanimously. He may find that some of them are not acting in ways that he would appreciate. He may even support the idea that these 3 are in fact guilty of corruption before even having been proven to be the same. But to me, he benefits if he could join the party, meaning he needs to sit down with the people who appointed him so willingly just not too long ago, 100 days ago, and try to figure out ways in which they can work together to advance the agenda. He should not be a sole actor. We also don't need another Ariel Henry. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So those are my final points.
Thank you, Michelle. I remember when you called for Henri to step down, and he subsequently did. So, Jeffsky, I have to limit you to about a minute because we're running out of time. I'm very sorry for that, but it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Pereira. Well, I think, as I just want to add, to what Michelle was saying, it's very important for both the Prime Minister, the government, and the Presidential Council to understand that the success of this transition depends on their capacity to maintain some kind of internal cohesion. So if there's not unity, then it's gonna collapse, and I don't think that's gonna serve any of them, because it's this entire process depends on the capacity to collaborate together and to make it work. And there's a reason why we decided to have this multi-parties structure. It's because the fact of the matter is nobody alone, not a single individual, has enough convening power to lead this process in Haiti, right? So that's why we have like a multi-parties structure, and it's important for them to understand that. And also the involvement of the civil society. We cannot go anywhere without involving the civil society in this process. It's a transitional process. It's not there's not a single elected official. So only the participation and involvement of the civil society can give enough legitimacy to the actions of the government. So that's why it's important for the government to, establish the oversight body that would ultimately has this mandate to oversee the government apparatus, but also involve the civil society to build trust among political parties, because that's a precondition to having fair and credible elections.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that the summary of what you've been saying in the last few minutes reminds me of the famous quote from Benjamin Franklin during the time of the American Revolution, that we either all hang separately, we all hang together or we hang separately. And I don't mean to suggest that the members of the Presidential Transitional Council will be executed, but their destiny does depend on some degree of unity, some degree of cohesion, some ability to deliver what the Haitian people want. And so I think that's a very strong message that you've all converged on here. I want to thank the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy, the Jack Gordon Institute, Pay Cargo, and reiterate what you said at the beginning, Friendly, that the situation in Haiti is very important to those of us in the Latin American Caribbean Center. It's important to us at FIU, and I hope we can continue to have events like this and to keep the focus on Haiti and to hope that we continue to see improvement. So I really appreciate all of you who are online, who gave us questions. I'm very grateful to you, the panelists, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.